Hello and welcome, I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines of the hour. Australia begins mourning after a father and son carry out a deadly shooting at a Jewish celebration at Sydney's Bondi Beach, killing 16 people. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese call it a dark moment for our nation, as authorities describe the attack as targeted anti-Semitic violence. Police detain a person of interest after a shooting at Brown University kills 2 people and injures 9 others in Rhode Island. Authorities say the gunman opens fire in a classroom with most of the wounded now in stable condition. Hong Kong's High Court finds pro-democracy media tycoon Jimmy Lai guilty of sedition and collusion with foreign forces under a China-imposed security law. The verdict, which could carry a life sentence, draws international criticism amid concerns over Hong Kong's rule of law. Chile elects far-right candidate José Antonio Cast as president with more than 58% of the vote after a campaign focused on security and crime. The result marks the country's sharpest shift to the right since the end of military rule, as Cast defeats left-wing rival Janet Jara. Security experts say Ukraine's offer to drop its NATO bid is unlikely to significantly shift peace talks with Russia. President Volodymyr Zelensky says security guarantees from the US and Europe would serve as a compromise in place of NATO membership. Syria says it arrests 5 suspects linked to a shooting in Palmyra that kills 2 US soldiers and a civilian interpreter. Authorities say the attacker, who is shot dead, is a member of the security forces suspected of sympathizing with Islamic State. Nvidia says it is considering boosting production of its H200 AI chips after demand from Chinese tech companies exceeds current supply. The move follows a US decision to allow H200 exports to China with a 25% fee, though Beijing has yet to approve purchases. Britain says it will begin regulating crypto assets from October 2027 under new legislation aimed at providing industry certainty and blocking bad actors. The move extends existing financial rules to crypto firms and aligns the UK more closely with the United States than the EU. We start with our top story this hour. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has confirmed that the nation of Australia will mourn the victims of the Bondi Beach shooting with flags ordered to fly at half-mast today. Albanese also vowed to take all necessary steps to fight anti-Semitism in the country. He also thanked world leaders for their sympathy and solidarity. Let's take a listen in.
We will do whatever is necessary to stamp out anti-Semitism. It is a scourge and we will eradicate it together. Flags will fly at half-mast across the country today as we pay our respects to all those lost and all those who have been injured.
Meanwhile, the police have identified the alleged gunman as a father and a son. The police have stated that the father was killed at the scene while the son remains in critical condition in custody. Authorities have also confirmed they are not seeking further offenders in connection with the attack. Let's in fact listen in to what the police have said on the incident.
Offenders are a 50-year-old and 24-year-old male who are father and son. The 50-year-old is deceased. The 24-year-old is currently in hospital at the moment.
US President Donald Trump has condemned the incident that occurred during a Hanukkah event, calling it a purely anti-Semitic attack. Let's take a listen in to the US President.
And likewise in Australia, as you know, there was a terrible attack, 11 dead, 29 badly wounded. and that was an anti-Semitic attack, obviously. And I just want to pay my respects to everybody.
The Palestinian Foreign Ministry has also condemned the Bondi attack, stating that it rejects all forms of violence and terrorism. Meanwhile, Albanese has announced that the Australian government is considering tougher gun laws and a review of gun licences over a period of time. He has added that tougher laws will include a limit on the number of guns used or licensed by individuals in Australia. Joining us now is Daniela Bloom, a political commentator. She joins us live from Los Angeles in California. Daniela, thank you very much for joining us here on NewsX World. It's a pleasure to have you. Can I first get your reaction to the news that the perpetrators of this was a father and a son? What does this say about radicalization in the Western world when it comes to anti-Semitism, especially because in a country like Australia, anti-Semitic attacks are up five-fold in contrast to pre-October the 7th levels?
It's alarming. It's a tragedy. Unfortunately, this is happening way too often. This was a first night of Hanukkah event with over 1,000 people gathering in celebration, children, the elderly, and for this tragedy to happen with a father and son team, if only there were signs, and there were signs. Broad border policies, an influx of people of the Islamic faith. Now, not all people who are of the Islamic religion are radicalized, but when a good percentage are, and there's 2 billion in the world, we see this not just in Australia, we're seeing it in America, we're seeing it in Europe, we're seeing it in the UK, and it's alarming. And there is a rise of anti-Israel propaganda that has contributed to Jews who have nothing to do with the war being targeted all over the world.
Daniela, we don't know the religion of the alleged suspects yet. However, what we do know is that there was a man who was indeed a Muslim who was in that viral video disarming that gunman. But what I do want to talk about is that there has been allegations from Benjamin Netanyahu that Prime Minister Albanese did not do enough to combat anti-Semitism. Do you believe that this is an attack that could have been prepared for, that could have been prevented?
I think what Prime Minister Netanyahu was referring to was that they were given a lot of warning signs that were not heeded. And yes, Australia has the strictest gun laws. And so if there is a rise in fear from the Jewish community who are not able to arm themselves, that is a concern. But I'm very pleased with how the Prime Minister responded to this act of terrorism. He is doing it. He's taking this very seriously. This is not the Australia he wants to see. He wants to do whatever he can to combat this and make sure this does not happen, if that even includes lifting some strict restrictions on carrying guns. And I did see some firsthand accounts of people saying that they did hear screams of Allahu Akbar, and that is why the Islamic terrorism claim has been given. But to that point as well, the fruit salesman was also a Muslim man, and he did absolutely display a genuine act of heroism. He did tackle one of the gunmen, and for sure stopped perhaps other fatalities that could have gone wrong. And at this time, there's one of the 2 gunmen have since been deceased.
Daniela, do stay with us as we have further updates to discuss, but this time coming out of the United States. And another crucial update has emerged from the Brown University mass shooting, which took place on Saturday, claiming 2 lives and leaving 9 people injured. The person of interest detained earlier by the Providence Police Department has now been reportedly identified as 24-year-old Benjamin Erickson. But as per latest police briefings, he will be released soon from police custody. So far, what we know about Benjamin Erickson is that he served as an infantryman in the US Army from 2021 to 2024 and does not have any criminal records. An Army spokesperson informed a media outlet that Benjamin Erickson was never deployed in the US military. He also reportedly transferred from the University of Wisconsin to Brown this fall. Now, as per police reports, Benjamin Erickson was arrested from a local hotel yesterday and that he had 2 guns in his possession when taken into custody. Providence and Rhode Island police officials have said that the Brown University remained on lockdown for several hours on Saturday after the incident as they looked for the suspect. At the time of the shooting, the university was filled with students who had their finals scheduled this week. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump also shared his condolences to the grieving families of the mass shooting victims earlier today and hoped for the quick recovery of 9 who were injured. Daniela joins us once again. Daniela, of course, this will once again come down to the debate of gun safety in the United States. Could you tell us a little bit more about the gun law, specifically in Rhode Island, where this shooting took place at an Ivy League university?
Yes, it's every parent's worst nightmare. You send your child off to college, an Ivy League college, no doubt, and to get the call that they've been murdered with not even knowing answers is terrible and should pull at every single American's heartstrings tonight. Rhode Island is a blue state, so with blue states come much stricter gun laws. There's 7-day holdings, there's screenings, but it's still not enough. I do think with the advancement of AI, I wouldn't be surprised that part of being able to carry a gun, there will be a social media sweeping of concerning consistent hate speech, because that has been one of the biggest correlations in these acts of violence. They tend to make their intentions known on social media, on Discord, on X, and this is really important to scrutinize. It's not guns who kill people, it's people who are in need of mental health, who often are the ones who are making these heinous acts. And whatever political island you fall under, whatever your ideology is, violence is never the answer. This is not the America that was founded under Judeo-Christian values and freedom of religion, freedom of speech. Violence of any kind because you disagree with someone's ideology is unacceptable here.
Daniela, of course, the United States is a complete outlier when it comes to these mass shootings in the Western world. But of course, it is the only country with the kind of gun laws that America does have. Do you see this shooting? Of course, there's been nearly 300 in 2025, which, by the way, is a decline. But do you see any legal changes being passed through following this shooting, or is it going to be more political stalemate in the gun debate?
Again, I don't think it's necessarily stricter gun laws only, although, like you heard me say earlier, I do think that there should be much more due diligence on the mental health side. But that's not the root cause. The root cause is radicalizing youth and thinking that violence is the answer. And this is a holistic approach. In America specifically, you still have a lot of Trump derangement syndrome. You have a lot of vilification of the other, and that's not the answer. We need to bring back nuance. We need to bring back grace. And our children are watching. They're watching their parents. They're watching political leaders. They're watching their teachers. And if we can all do our part to turn down the temperature, I think that collectively will make far more of an impact.
Yes, Daniela, do stay with us once again as we next have news coming out of West Asia. And Syrian officials have arrested 5 people so far, which they suspect could have potential links to the shooting of US and Syrian troops that took place in the central Syrian town of Palmyra on Saturday. A convoy of American and Syrian forces were targeted by an attacker who killed 2 US Army soldiers and a civil interpreter. Now, the Syrian ministry has described the attacker as a member of the Syrian security forces and alleged that the attacker sympathizes with the Islamic State. In response, US President Donald Trump has issued a statement saying that those responsible for the attack on US troops in Syria will have to face serious consequences. Let's take a listen in to the US President.
I must say in Syria also, we had an attack in Syria, and we had 3 great patriots terminated by bad people, and not the Syrian government. It was ISIS. Syrian government fought by our side. The new president fought by our side. But I just want to pay my respects to the families. We also had 3 injured, but 2 of them are already out of the hospital, and one's going to be okay. But we lost 3, so it was a rough day. I can tell you in Syria, there will be a lot of damage done to the people that did it. They got the individual person, but there'll be big damage done. And the other, supposedly, they call him a person of interest, so I'll keep it along those lines so we don't get ourselves in any trouble, but they have a person of interest at Brown. And in Australia, you probably read it's been a very, very brave person, actually, who went and attacked frontally one of the shooters and saved a lot of lives. So very brave person who's right now in the hospital, pretty seriously wounded. So great respect to that man that did that.
Daniela, of course, 3 American citizens dying and being killed alongside the Syrian armed forces. What are your thoughts on Donald Trump's stance when it comes to approaching this situation? Of course, the United States led a campaign against the Islamic State in Syria for decades. Country is still vastly unstable with sectarian violence killing hundreds just a few months ago. Donald Trump, however, reiterating that Syria is indeed working hard to bring these people to justice. Does America risk getting dragged into Syria once again with the US president's stance?
President Trump does not like to start wars. He likes to end them. But he also is not afraid of swift retaliation, but strategic retaliation. These strikes on U.S. citizens are taken very seriously by the president, but they are also not. This is an act of provocation by these Islamic terrorist groups. They want the West to retaliate, so they can say, "Look, we're at war," and they can start radicalizing and recruiting. Trump is not going to fall for that. He's going to be very strategic in how he responds, and it will send a message, and it will be unexpected, because that's how you rule in this region of the world: peace through strength.
Daniela Bloom, thank you very much for joining us here in NewsX World. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much for taking the time. We now move on and over to Europe, and US envoy Steve Witkoff says significant progress was made during high-stakes peace talks in Berlin aimed at ending the Ukraine war. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky held more than 5 hours of discussions with US officials, including Witkoff, with negotiations set to continue today as well. Zelensky signalled a major shift, offering to drop Ukraine's long-held ambition to join NATO in exchange for strong, legally binding Western security guarantees. He stressed the need for US-backed Article 5-like protection and support from European allies, as well as partners such as Canada and Japan, to deter future Russian aggression. The talks in Berlin focused on a 20-point peace plan, economic issues and security arrangements. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz hosted the meeting in Berlin, while other European leaders prepared for follow-up discussions. Russia has long demanded Ukraine renounce NATO aspirations, making these talks a potentially pivotal moment nearly 4 years after Moscow's invasion. Professor Veselin Popovsky joins us now. He's a professor and vice dean at Jindal Global Law School. He joins us live from New Delhi. Professor Popovsky, thank you very much for joining us. President Zelensky, after much pressuring from Moscow and the United States, has dropped Ukraine's NATO aspirations. Do you think this will change anything when it comes to leverage in peace negotiations when approaching the United States and, of course, Moscow?
Hopefully, that's a good progress, what we see yesterday in Berlin, and it will continue later today once the morning time comes to Berlin. The signals are positive, which is good, and not only the NATO security guarantees. So basically, if there are security guarantees for Ukraine of the article type of guarantees, which means basically that NATO will get engaged in a future Russian attacks on Ukraine, this one Ukraine will accept. So there is no problem with that. NATO membership is a long-term issue. It might not come in the next 5 to 10 years. Ukraine doesn't want to continue insisting on NATO membership. So basically, Ukraine will be happy with the agreement, which is very much in line with Article 5 of the NATO treaty, which provides those security guarantees. But also, I guess the decision in Europe, which goes back a couple of days ago, to use the Russian assets to rebuild Ukraine comes very timely. In other words, those billions that are in possession in Brussels, in Belgium, already agreed by the European members, including by Belgium, to be utilized for future Ukrainian economic reconstruction, for future economic and military reconstruction of Ukraine is very significant. So these two advances is probably, we need still to see what happened today, but probably what Witkoff and Kushner in Berlin today are happy with, and they will obviously report that back to Donald Trump. The US administration will talk again with the Russians, but we see some, let's say, slight improvement, some light in the end of the tunnel. So hopefully that can bring ceasefire, if not long-term peace deal, ceasefire on the contact line as currently it is. There will not be territorial concessions. There will not be discussions at this point about territories, but simply ceasefire, stopping both sides, will be a good news for this Christmas.
Of course, but Professor Popovsky, analysts have said that this won't make much of a difference due to the fact that, of course, Article 5 is one of the main reasons why Russia does not want Ukraine to join NATO. Do you really think this changes anything when it comes to Russia prolonging this peace, peace deal before Christmas, especially given the hardline security guarantees that Ukraine is demanding?
I think Russia has no voice anymore. Russia cannot advance on the battlefield. They simply are in a very weak positions with all the sanctions, with all the military support for Ukraine. They claim they took Kupiansk a couple of weeks ago. President Zelensky went there and made photo himself in Kupiansk, showing the lies and the manipulation of the Russian propaganda. And in such situations where Russia does, you know that Russia makes advance of 1 kilometer per month, the speed of a snail, the slowest animal on earth. That is the Russian advance, 1 kilometer per month, losing tens of thousands of soldiers on the battlefield. So whatever Russia say, they have to accept. And this is actually a good deal for Russia to accept that Ukraine is not going to join NATO, but it will have the security guarantees by NATO. So at some point, Putin needs to sell to his audience in Russia something that he achieved. And that's already something he can report. He's a liar, he's a manipulator. He can tell Russians, I achieved the goals in Ukraine, Ukraine will not join NATO.
Yes.
And if Russia buy that, so be it.
Professor Veselin Popovsky, always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much for talking to us and taking the time. We now move over to Northern Africa, and flash floods triggered by sudden heavy rain have killed at least 21 people in the Moroccan coastal town of Safi. Authorities say torrential weather rushed through the streets of the historic old city, flooding at least 70 homes and businesses. More than 30 people were injured and taken to hospital, though most have since been discharged. Videos shared online show muddy water sweeping away cars and debris, while damage to roads disrupted traffic in and out of the Atlantic port city. Residents described scenes of devastation, calling it a black day, as families searched through mud to salvage belongings. Officials warn the danger is not over, with more heavy rain forecast in the coming days. Morocco has faced increasingly extreme weather as climate change intensifies storms despite years of severe drought. Moving on now to a story from the tech world, and according to reports, Nvidia is considering increasing production of its H200 AI chips due to overwhelming demand from Chinese clients. This follows a US decision allowing Nvidia to export these chips to China with a 25% fee on sales. Major Chinese companies, including Alibaba and ByteDance, have expressed strong interest in ordering the H200. However, the Chinese government has yet to approve these sales, with officials holding emergency meetings to discuss the issue. The H200 is Nvidia's second fastest AI chip and is in high demand due to its superior performance, 6 times more powerful than Nvidia's H20 chip, tailored for China. Nvidia is also focused on meeting US demand while managing its supply chain. The company is working to balance the supply of H200 chips with ongoing production of more advanced lines like Blackwell and Rubin. Well, that's all that we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more international updates.